Well, it is 3 o'clock, so we will get the presentation started. Hello, everyone. My name is Amanda Clemens, and I'm the Marketing Director for the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank you all for joining us, and I also would like to thank all of our exchange sponsors, including Effectv, our technology sponsor, and who we will be hearing from shortly. I do want to point out the Q&A in chat is live during this presentation, and questions will be addressed at the end. If you would like to submit a question or comment, you can locate the chat feed on the right side of your screen. Please make sure to have selected session, not event, at the top, and that will make sure that your comment goes just to this group. The pandemic has fundamentally reshaped how consumers live, work, shop, and play. COVID-driven behaviors have rapidly accelerated underlying trends, forcing a massive shift in go-to-market strategies for 2020. While some of these habit shifts will endure into this new year and beyond, others may fizzle once the health crisis subsides. So how do we rethink marketing in 2021? Today we'll hear from Lisa Ahern, VP Product Marketing at Effectv, and Vanessa Watts, Executive Vice President Media at Laughlin Constable. Their discussion will offer practical advice on best practices culled from aggregated trends, including case studies of advertising clients who are successfully navigating this new landscape. We'll start today's presentation with a short video.
Amanda, thank you so much for the intro. Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Ahern. Really happy to be here with you today. As Amanda said, I'm the Vice President of Product Marketing for Effectv. I've been with the organization for just over 3 years. Prior to that, I have about 25 plus years of experience across all different areas of media, including in ad sales roles, on the client side, and certainly in marketing. But I've never actually been on the agency side, which is one of the reasons I'm so excited to get to spend some time with Executive Vice President of Media for Laughlin Constable, Vanessa Watts. Vanessa, welcome. I'd love for you to share with everybody a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much for having me join you today. I am the head of media at Laughlin Constable. We are a mid-size independent agency with offices in both Chicago and Milwaukee. But to your point, Lisa, I have spent the majority of my career in ad agencies. It's been a lengthy career, but I also had spent some time client side as well. So I feel like I have a really good understanding of both sides of that equation.
Excellent. Great. Well, I'm really looking forward to spending the next half hour or so, maybe a little longer, just talking with you about some of the ideas that we've learned in 2020, how everything has sort of changed. Let's kick it off by sharing what I think is my favorite meme of the year so far. I was told 2021 would be different. Well, clearly we're almost in March. We're all still pretty much in some state of lockdown. We're all limited in terms of what we're able to do, who we're able to see. So I'd love to kick it off, Vanessa, by asking you, how is 2021 treating you so far?
Well, me personally, or the business? Because those are two different things.
Don't get too personal.
You know, it's interesting. We just had an executive meeting this morning, and we were talking about how I think what all agencies are feeling, or people across all agencies, and I'm sure clients, is just kind of like, I don't know if lethargy is the right word, but you know, everybody's missing that in-person connection. That's really, you know, challenging to get over Zoom. In terms of, you know, business from our agency's perspective, you know, we're doing, I think we've fared pretty well. You know, we've actually had a lot of new business opportunities that have presented themselves over, the last 12 months. So we've been very fortunate, in that way. But I think, it's just been challenging. It's been challenging to keep people motivated. It's been challenging to, make sure we're still maintaining strong connections with our clients, and, continue to bring innovation to them. Because a lot of times that innovation is sparked by, those hallway conversations or those in-person brainstorms. So, it's like, how do we find ways to be able to keep that going?
Absolutely. And I love hearing that you've had a lot of new business opportunities. There's an expression out there that every crisis is a great opportunity. And while certainly it's been a terrible, tragic event for the entire world, there are certain ways to be able to look at it to say, okay, now we're in a new reality. How do I reframe everything differently? And the fact that they're coming to you as an agency expert to figure out how to do that, to me, I think that makes so much sense. And I also miss being in the office. For me, some of the most valuable time I spend in the office with my colleagues is standing next to a whiteboard where we're mapping out different ideas and erasing things and coming up with a new strategy and a new positioning statement. So I definitely feel that same way. Do you know if you have any plans to be returning back to your office anytime soon, or whether you ever will?
Yeah, we actually just talked about that this morning. We don't have a firm date yet. I think, until vaccine rollout, I think becomes more commonplace. We're going to continue to work from home. I think it's also been different for us because there's a different dynamic between the Milwaukee office and the Chicago office, just in terms of the fact that most of the people in our Milwaukee office drive into work. Yeah. So it's easier to get there. Whereas in the Chicago office, I would say, the majority of the office relies on public transportation. And so I think that there's just been some concerns about, the safety of with COVID of being on public transportation. But I think when we do go back, it's going to look different. I think people are going to want more flexibility. We have had some people relocate to other states because we've proven that you can still, do this job and be a part of the agency while not necessarily being physically a part of the agency.
Yeah, we're experiencing a lot of the same event that you are. We've had several people who have relocated. Someone on my team moved from New York to Pennsylvania. I live in Manhattan and I take the subway to work every day. I have not stepped foot on a subway since last March. And we don't have a car, so I've been extremely local in my neighborhood. Right. But to your point, we don't know when we're going back, and we don't know what we're going back to. And I think that really, leads into the fact that not just our particular businesses, but all of the businesses that we work with, and especially your clients, we've all really had to adapt during the pandemic. Can you talk a little bit about how some of your clients have adapted during the pandemic to stay relevant and drive sales?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think we have a couple of creative spots we're going to look at. So, I think we started off the year really strong across all of our clients. And, the brakes really hit, when the pandemic, happened and everybody was having to shelter from home. We work with a couple of hospital systems and, they weren't taking, it was only emergency situations. And so, we really had to change how we communicated with our audience. We had a client, Jewelers Mutual, they do jewelry insurance. And, we had a really strong January and February, and then March just went off the rails because, a big driving force of their business is engagement ring insurance. And so with weddings being paused or, people not proposing, it really impacted the business. Go ahead.
No, absolutely. I'm thinking of my previous role. One of my previous roles before I was with Effectv, I worked for thenot.com. So I know very well about the importance of jewelry insurance and understanding the relevance with related to the wedding market. And it's something that it's one of those things that is just out of our control. But as as the agency of record for this client, it's up to you to come up with a strategy for them to first be able to create their message. So I am very excited that we're going to be able to show that spot in a couple of minutes.
Great. One of the other spots we're going to look at is a spot for the ASPCA. So they're a nonprofit that we work with. And, when in March, we started to see donations drop, and we were very concerned about what that was going to mean, for the rest of the year. And then by April, we saw a complete 180 in terms of consumer behavior on that front. And we were really, we were really surprised that people were giving, even if they didn't necessarily have for themselves, because they really wanted to be able to do something. And you'll also see a spot for the ASPCA that we did that allowed us to really kind of talk about the pandemic as a part of the broader initiative that the ASPCA was doing to try and help families and pets in need. So I think it was really about being able to pivot, not just our messaging, but also our media strategy, with more people consuming connected television because more people were staying at home. We really did pivot a lot of our strategies to take advantage of that. Ended up being, a thing for our clients. So.
I love that. And I love that the fact that for both of the clients who you're referring to, when it comes to the ASPCA, I can't tell you how many people I know who adopted a pet for the first time, either because they wanted some company, they lived by themselves and didn't want to live by themselves. They wanted a living creature with them. Right. And also a lot of my friends with families who were now going to be home all day and had the bandwidth to start taking care of a pet. So I love the fact that you're tying in from the ASPCA fundraising perspective, and yet it really touched millions of people who, first of all, were able to adopt these pets in shelters and then support the organization, which so desperately needed funding. So I love that when you talk about your clients, everybody on this call can really relate to how that affects individual people, whether it's jewelry, whether it's ASPCA and pets, that we need to remember that everything we do as a business ultimately has a personal connection at the end. And that's something I think that we all need to remember in everything that we do.
Absolutely. And I think, that kind of segues into, I know we're going to talk a little bit about, what businesses need to be kind of keeping an eye on as we move into, the rest of this year. And I think coming out of this, it's that notion of personalization, of being able to have the right message that's compelling to somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting when so many people think of TV advertising, they think of it as, I'm going to reach 3 million people in one creative and one 30-second spot. It's going to be a Super Bowl size creative. But what the technology of data enablement has been able to do is it's opened up so many doors to enable that targetability using complete privacy and anonymity and making sure that we don't use that creepiness factor, but we're able to use insights from viewership data and subscriber data to help deliver the message to the right people who are interested in specific products and services. And to me, that's really what makes TV personal now. It's not just the big, broad Super Bowl message, but there are different areas of that marketing funnel that customers can look into, whether you're a small independent business owner, whether you're an agency, whether you're a huge holdco, anywhere in between, and find that mix. And depending on what stage of that marketing and sales funnel your customers are in, you can deliver the message to that audience using data at a level of sophistication that you've never been able to do before. And that's across both linear and digital.
Absolutely. And I think, having worked in advertising as long as I have, the phrase, if I had $1 for every time I heard the phrase, the right person at the right time with the right message. But I think that's true even more so now, because the the proliferation of data has really enabled us to be able to have that more personal connection, know when the right time is, and be able to segment them to a point where we can, be able to deliver the right type of messaging that's going to be compelling to them.
Exactly. And the effective version of that same statement is that we're able to find your audience and deliver your message wherever, whenever, and however they watch TV. So it's the same concept flips on its head, because we all know that the audience for TV has become so fractured. People are watching on different devices. They're watching on their own times. Most people don't even know what linear means anymore. Even though we know the majority of TV viewing still happens on linear TV, cord cutting is a thing. And we need to be able to convey messages to however viewers are choosing to watch TV. We needed to evolve as an industry to meet their needs. And that's what we're doing. And I love that you're embracing that, and that even though that message might sound corny, it's becoming the truth after we've been just using those words. Now we're actually walking the talk.
Well, and you're absolutely right. I mean, I remember sitting in a presentation about 5 years ago, and the chief creative officer put up like TV is dead. And I was like, no, it's not. If you actually look at the amount of time that people are spending with television or video, I like to say video because that becomes platform agnostic, especially during the pandemic, like the amount of time spent viewing is actually increased. But what people need to understand is that how people are watching is what is variable, right? So there are still plenty of people who are watching linear television, but they're also watching on their smartphone. They're also watching on their tablet. They're also watching connected television. So, from our perspective, it's really important to us that we look at that holistically when we plan, because you can't just say we're only going to do, Roku, or we're only going to do connected TV, we're only going to do linear, we're only going to do that, because then you're missing an opportunity to connect with people who may, connect with the cord cutters or the cord nevers, but also the people who still watch linear but might be supplementing that with watching in other
Exactly
ways.
Right. I mean, my family is the ultimate cord stacker family. Not only do we have premium cable, and of course, I don't live in an Xfinity neighborhood, so I pay for all of our premium cable. And then, of course, we also have Netflix and Amazon Prime and Peacock and Roku and Apple TV Plus and everything else you can possibly imagine. So we are the ultimate example of how we really do watch TV on all screens. I'll be watching something on the TV in the living room. My husband will be on the TV in the bedroom watching, maybe watching Spectrum TV, but using the streaming app. And then our daughter will be on her tablet watching something completely different on Apple TV Plus. And we're getting to the point, the technology isn't quite there 100%, but the technology is developing minute by minute to be able to deliver messages to the right households and devices so that people don't complain about TV commercials, but they're actually seeing a message that's relevant to them. And that to me is what I love.
Yeah, I remember, kind of when connected television was really kind of like the curve was starting to go like this. And I would watch, through my Roku, whether that be, I actually watch Comcast through my Roku, or Xfinity, sorry. And, it was like I was watching a show and I'd see the same commercial, like every ad break the whole time. And I remember I actually called my rep and I was like, I don't know what's going on, but somebody's got to learn how to plan this connected TV because it's making me want to stop watching. But it's not like that anymore. And I think that's because so many advertisers have embraced a multi-platform approach that there's so many more people or so many more advertisers who are running in that space that it really, honestly, it feels just like you're watching regular linear television.
It really does.
Even if
yeah, there's no difference about that. And I love that from the agency perspective and the media perspective, we're all really thinking along the same lines because we need to make sure that we're aligned in order to move the industry forward. If we went in one direction and you went in another, nobody would be happy and viewers would be the least happy of all. So we're really making progress on that.
Absolutely.
So I would love to continue the conversation as an agency executive to get your take on a study that Comcast Advertising led with Media Village and the Myers report this time last year. It was a survey of 700 advertisers and agency executives on their perceptions of 72 sales agencies. And at the start of the survey, participants were asked to rate the importance of a list of 13 different attributes. So if we can go to the next slide, awesome, thank you. These were the top 3 that all had responses in the 80% range. Relevancy was really in reference to audience reach, and that they were looking for media partners who can deliver audiences that are valuable to their clients' needs. Trusted relationships was really all about the importance of finding partners that consistently and reliably delivered on their promises. And brand safety was really all about making sure that they were delivering their marketing messaging and content and on properties that are trusted by them. So I would love to hear your take on whether you think that these are the right 3, whether you have others that you would put at the top too.
I honestly feel like all 3 of these are really important. I think trust encompasses so many different areas, and I think trust in the data that, you know, our partners are using and the effectiveness of that data and, you know, how it's collected. I think in the last, 6 months, I know internally at our agency, that is something that we've been talking so much more about, is about, being able to have the right data, especially with, cookies, like the demise of the cookie. Apple's definitely made some, drawn a big line in the sand with that, with the iOS 14 update.
Yeah.
But, I think all 3 of those things still remain very relevant. It was interesting with, with everything that happened with, at the Capitol in January. Gosh, was that January? Yes, it was. We all wanted to make sure that like we weren't running in content that was going to be, controversial. So, we had to make sure that we were, especially from a streaming perspective, in the right places, et cetera, or not in, certain areas. But, having a partner who can help with that, I think, is really important. And I will say, from an Effectv perspective. Effective, sorry. You're right. From an Effectv perspective, I think the content that we, the content that we get from you guys is that it's always premium, right? So that makes it easier on us because we don't necessarily, have to really worry about where we're at, because we know, that the content is premium. And I will say, just again, back to the trust is, you guys have a phenomenal research department who can really help with like random requests in a pinch, because we've definitely had that before. But again, just always being able to understand that, that the content that we're going to get is relevant and brand safe, and helping us reach the right audiences is crucial.
I love that. And I think it's so true. There are so many different media platforms out there that cannot guarantee brand safety, cannot guarantee creative association. And it's scary as an agency, as a client, nobody's ever going to be able to see every single time an impression is delivered across every single platform. So knowing that with Effectv, it's brand safe, it definitely does provide that level of security. Certainly it's premium TV, premium video. We've also been leaning heavily into short form TV because we believe in the power of TV so much that we added it to our name, and whether you're watching a short form clip or a long form show or a sports highlight or a monologue from a late night show, people love TV content. And we're enabling more of that content so that even small businesses can deliver their message within that TV content down to the level of just a few zip codes instead of, again, feeling the need to do it at a wider scale. So TV definitely rules. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and I think that's I actually think that's one of the most interesting things about, kind of where we find ourselves, in this time and space, is that, it used to be that if you wanted to be on television, you had to spend a ton of money. And the nice thing is that, because we work with a broad range of clients and have a broad range of budgets. So some can afford to get into television, but others still want to be able to access that content and align with people who are viewing, but don't have the budgets to be able to maybe get onto linear, but we can still look at video as a solution for them and still align with that premium content. So I think that's what makes like where we're at now, I think is so interesting, because nothing is off limits anymore.
It's so true. And for small businesses out there who might not be able to afford your services, we also have an ad planner self-service portal where for $400 with an extra $100 towards cross screen, a client can run a 2-week multi-screen TV campaign focused on the area surrounding their business. So we're really dispelling the myth that TV is only for very, very large clients. Certainly we do that really well, and you are the person to make that happen, which is fantastic. But in case anybody's out there listening who might be a small business owner, and you can't quite afford Vanessa's incredible services through Laughlin, we do have opportunities for as little as $500 to run cross-screen campaigns. So to your point, it's not always a huge expense. And again, even Vanessa, for some of your clients, if they're not looking to target across a whole DMA or a multi-market, TV can be quite affordable if you're really zoning in on local spend. So it's always opportunity.
Absolutely, and we've done that for some of our for our medical client, our hospital client, where we've actually gone down to the zip level. Because we didn't want to buy the whole DMA. We wanted to be very focused on where their locations were, but still get the benefit of being able to use, television.
Absolutely. And that's one of the benefits of working with Effectv, because we're able to use the insights from 22 million set-top boxes to be able to identify viewing habits for different audience segments, and then make sure that we're delivering the message to the audience segments in the TV content that they're most likely going to be watching. So it's not just narrow target, but it's smart targeting too. And to your point, our data scientists are by far the brightest people, along with our engineers in our organization. I always say that data will only get you so far. You need really smart data scientists to be able to interpret that data and actually make it worth something. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of numbers.
Exactly. It's just data for data.
Exactly. So we're hitting on something that actually brings us to our next slide. So our perfect timing. As we know, with COVID, our rules for business operations are constantly changing, with COVID levels going up and down. How are you focusing on what's happening in your clients' geos as, an arena might open up for 10% of seating for a few basketball games, but then for the next event it's going to be closed down, and things can change on a whim. Just what you're looking at on here is just all of the different coverage of where Effectv happens to have our main markets, but certainly I'm sure you have clients who are across the full country too.
Yes, we do, and I think that's one of the benefits, I think, of working, with an agency, is that it's really important that we are staying up to speed on what's happening. Like, we've got clients in California. Their laws are, their kind of COVID guidelines are very different to what might be happening, say, in Texas or Florida. We also have clients who are on the East Coast. We have clients who are national. So it's really about, being at the, up to speed on what's happening in those marketplaces. But, also kind of what's happening with consumers. Like, Jewelers Mutual is based in Wisconsin, but they have a much broader geo footprint. But, what was happening with weddings, like, that's kind of state agnostic. That's happening across the world. And that was actually, one of the reasons that we pivoted our messaging, because in February, we had just launched a brand new brand campaign for them. And then when COVID happened, we wanted to pivot to be able to say, like, hey, listen, we understand what you're going through. People are still finding ways to find love, even in this, even in this situation. So when you're ready, like, we're there for you. And then with ASPCA, like I said, we talk about the fact that, like, we're there to help animals in need during disasters, but even, pandemics, because you're right, a lot of people were adopting pets, but there were a lot of people who already had pets who may have lost their jobs because of COVID, and they still needed to find a way to feed their animals. And that's one of the things that ASPCA did, was like food drives for people, because ultimately their goal is to help get animals into a home, but also to help keep them in the home. And so, we pivoted, and that was, one of the benefits of having an internal production facility as a part of our agency, is that we were able to very quickly turn around new video creative for both of them.
I love that. That's great. And I know everyone wants to see the videos. We're coming up on them. Before we do, I'm curious on your take about data and technology, where we're just talking about our data scientists and how important it is, and that we've got more choices to spend precious marketing dollars today than we ever have before. If we could just show the next slide. I'm curious to know, I'm sure you hear it all the time. You have a media seller, an awesome account executive who walks into your office, or now at least pings you on Zoom and says, boy, oh boy, have I got the latest technology for you. Let me tell you all about it. And you get all excited about it, and you think you understand it, but maybe not quite really. Like, how do you approach evaluating all of these different advertising opportunities and figuring out what makes the most sense for your clients?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I will say that as the lead of the department, I am inundated on a daily basis with people coming to me talking about, their new offering. And I think, where the first question I'm going to ask them is, how do you differentiate from your competitors? And I think, one of the great things about Effectv is you guys have all this amazing set-top box data. So, that's actual, person data. That's not modeled. It's not, it's not a guess. That's, I think, one of our biggest things. And we actually just created a new position at our agency where we have somebody who's like, leading media data and platforms, because, there are so many people and so many companies out there who talk about data, but the reality is that, how accurate is that data? How often is that data refreshed? Like, is it modeled? Is it, probabilistic? Is it deterministic? Like, there's just so much that's out there. And, that's why we created the role of having a specialist to kind of help our media team sort through some of that, to make sure that we're working with, the most effective data, because ultimately we want to it comes back to, we want to find the right people. We want to find them at the right time, and data helps inform all of those things. So that way we can be dynamic with the creative that we're serving to different groups.
I love that response, because you're thinking about it from the position of what's going to make the client see the best results. How is it going to deliver the best outcome, as opposed to how can I pitch the shiny new object to my client and get them to feel like they're the cool kids on the block because they're the first one to do programmatic or addressable, whatever it might be.
Absolutely.
I love that. Have you dipped your toes into the world of addressable at all yet?
We've started to do that for the ASPCA, but I would say that we haven't gone as far as we wanted to. I think scale is getting better on that front, but we haven't necessarily. I'm just going to leave it at we've started to. I think we could do more of it, but it's something we also like to take a test and learn approach. So start small, prove the results, because then it's really difficult for a client to say no if we can prove that it's working. Like, we definitely don't want to go into a client and tell them they have to commit, $10 million for a test. A test can be done, like now with so many different digital options, you can do a test that's much more affordable to get us a read to then be able to roll it out in a bigger way.
Absolutely right. And I love the fact that you think about the test and learn approach. We're big believers in that. And one thing that we find really important and that we stress is that if you're going to test something out, make sure you're not just testing a single product, but you're testing the product within the scope of a solution that will make that product work. Like, we know that addressable, which is really targeting at a household or device level, which is something that's very new for TV, is really hitting that bottom of the funnel in terms of the sales and marketing stages. And whereas TV is really known for the broad awareness, and now we're really focusing on that data-driven consideration set, that campaigns that only run addressable on TV don't get the business outcomes that they think they're going to get. If you're that focused on that narrow of an audience with that small of a message, stick to social. TV is not the place for you. But where addressable really shines when it comes to TV is that it adds that incremental reach to a higher funnel campaign that enables that true delivery and reaching different levels of the audience with different messages even. And we're really finding, and we're just similar to you, we're just getting into some testing with this, is that we want to make sure we're doing it so that we're showing clients success. We're not setting them up for disappointment. And it's really all about finding clients like you who are willing to test and learn with us. And that's one of the reasons why we love working with you and your agency.
Well, thank you. I mean, I will say that you guys make it really easy to not only execute a test, but also to make sure that we get the right kind of reporting to have it be readable. There's nothing more frustrating than working with a vendor that can't, back up the results of a campaign with solid reporting, but also very digestible reporting, because honestly, it makes our jobs a lot easier.
Well, I love hearing that, and I promise I will go straight back to our product team and tell them that you're happy with our reporting. There's this famous quote from John Wanamaker that's probably 100 years old. It says, I know that 50% of my advertising campaign worked. I just wish I knew what 50%. Well, today we actually can do that because of the technology enabled by set-top box viewership. And all of these different technologies, ad exposure, that we're able to really see what is working. So I'm so happy that you find that campaign transparency valuable. And we're just going to continue to improve that by being able to show you the incremental reach when you add digital to a linear campaign, or vice versa. The incremental reach when you add addressable to a higher funnel campaign. That's what we're really all about, showing you the value of your investment so that your clients see the business outcome and they want to reinvest and optimize.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it is about thinking about how to engage at each stage of the funnel. What you want to say to a customer when you're just introducing your brand to them needs to be very different to how you want to talk with them, when they're looking to convert, and it's different again to how you want to continue to have a conversation with them after you've sealed the deal, so to speak. And I think that's one of the things that we're really kind of focusing on at Laughlin, is how are we communicating? How are we identifying at what stage of the funnel that they're in, but then also how are we communicating with them each step of the way?
Vanessa, you're setting me up perfectly for the next section, which is about creative. Because to your point, depending on where that audience is in the marketing funnel, they're going to want to see a different creative messaging. So let's look at a couple of spots that you've produced. Just to give a little plug, we also have our own internal creative agency called Mnemonic. They're absolutely wonderful, and they were really instrumental in terms of helping our clients during COVID reposition their creative so that they could stay on air and still stay relevant as their business models changed. I know you've sent over a couple of examples. We've got one from Jewelers Mutual. We have one from Aspca. Let's go and play those, and then we'll have you give some recaps.
So just really quickly, these are both examples of ways that we pivoted creatively for our clients at the onset of the pandemic. So that way we could still be relevant, with what was happening in the marketplace.
Let's see, our wonderful tech support. Are we able to try and run this video one more time?
Love. It can bend the laws of physics, make time stand still, and travel distances near and far. Yes, Love works from home and will hop on a video conference anytime. Saturday at 7? Sure, Love's available. Because Love will always find a way. And as we get through this, which we will, just know that Jewelers Mutual is ready when you're ready to share your love. Jewelers Mutual. We insure jewelry and only jewelry.
I love that. Before we play the next one, Vanessa, you want to give us some context?
Yeah, absolutely. So the campaign that we launched in February was all about being a jewelry obsessed, right? Jewelers Mutual is so obsessed with jewelry. That's the only thing that they do. And so we wanted to still bring that notion of that campaign through, but address the fact that, like, we recognize that people can't get married right now, and you know, it's putting things on hold, but it's not putting love on hold. So when you're ready, we will be there for you. And honestly, it makes me smile every time I see that spot, because I love it so much. And I think we got such a positive, positive feedback from that ad, because it addressed what people were dealing with, like the fact that love works from home. Like, I mean, Jewelers Mutual gets it. So we love that very much. And then the next spot for ASPCA, it's a little long because we have actually found that long form works really well for the organization, which is interesting because most people think if you do video, it has to be short. That's not always the case. But this, again, we pivoted for this to show, what the organization does in times of crisis.
All right, let's take a look.
Life is full of events we can't control. But when it knocks us down, it's in our nature to keep going. And to those like you who help raise up others along the way, it's in your nature too. To these animals, your donations are the difference between lonely and loved. So we'll be here to rescue them, every time. Because our team knows that one thing we can control is fighting whatever nature throws at us. So we'll be here when they need us most, to provide food, water, and medical care. Through wildfires, hurricanes, and tornadoes, through rising water, treacherous terrain, and global pandemics, through whatever it takes to save a life. So far, your donations have helped us reach thousands of animals, providing us with supplies that heal, rehabilitate, and comfort. Because of you, we've seen firsthand the difference a full belly and medical care can make. And let us tell you, the difference, it's everything. So be their everything. Become an ASPCA supporter to help us continue rescuing those who can't rescue themselves. After all, it's in our nature.
I like it. I get teary every time.
I love it. I love it.
And so again, with our in-house production team, we were able to turn both of those spots around really quickly. And they, again, like I said, they both performed so well because we were, we were talking about things that were happening in the moment, and I think people found it really relatable. We definitely saw a very strong response of donations with that creative we ran for ASPCA, but also for Jewelers Mutual. So we actually were just talking about this the other day. We have a curve of, policy acquisition. And as soon as we turned that campaign on, we immediately saw the curve turn. So anybody who says video can't be powerful doesn't know what they're talking about, personally.
And anyone who says that all commercials are bad don't know what they're talking about either.
Exactly. Like, to me, those are two of my favorites. So
and interesting, sort of a personal tie into the Jewelers Mutual commercial is that one of the screen grabs, one of the short videos that's included in there, took place right around the corner from where I live. It was in Washington Heights in Upper Manhattan. And it was one of them in the apartment who were getting married, and everybody on the street was cheering for them. Yes. And we were so excited when that happened. And as soon as I saw it on the commercial, I'm like, call out to my neighborhood. So thank you.
It's just sweet. We love it. And I think people love watching a spot that they can relate to, that, really appeals to them. And we loved being a part of, being able to put that out in the world. So
I love that too. We are actually, I don't want to say we're short on time, but there are a couple things I'm going to skip over so that we can get through everything else and make sure that if there are questions, we still have some time.
Great.
So let's flip to the next slide. So let's talk a little bit about Effectv. And I know you've covered most of this already, so we can just go over it pretty lightly. Effectv is really built on 3 core pillars: building and maintaining trust, using data for smarter targeting, enabling efficiency. I know you've already talked quite a bit about being taking advantage of our data for smarter targeting, and in terms of building and maintaining trust, in terms of knowing what our content is. Have we been able to help you at all in terms of enabling efficiency? I know I'm putting you on the spot with this one.
That's okay. I think, for the client where we do both linear and video, being able to understand how we can extend our campaign reach, that drives efficiency right there. In terms of, from a purely linear standpoint, being able to get down to, as you mentioned, that zip code targeting for certain campaigns. Again, it all comes back to what you're trying to do and what your objectives are for a campaign. But, for this campaign where we only wanted to target, a 10-mile radius of locations, zip code targeting was perfect, and that we didn't have to buy an entire DMA and message to people that it wasn't going to be relevant to. We wanted to message to people that it was going to be the most relevant to. But like I said, for one of our tourism clients, being able to show, be able to look at the ways to maximize reach by layering on the linear with the digital, I think, again, that helps your dollars work harder for you.
I think that's so great. And I think that's one of the key focuses of success for all of our sellers and everyone in our Effectv organization, is that we are trying to enable efficiency within our own organization so that we can have a better response time in terms of RFPs, in terms of creative versioning and changes and things like that, in terms of optimizing campaigns. So, we're working to create more efficiency on our end so that we can then turn that over to you and create even greater efficiencies for you and your clients. So I feel like that's what everybody's all about these days. How much can we possibly get done, and how can we make everybody benefit from it more? So love to hear
Absolutely.
that you've really benefited from all 3 of our core pillars.
Absolutely.
Great. So let's go to our last slide. Our last slide for this part of the conversation before we wrap it up. And let's just go over some key takeaways. And these are some things that I think, from our time spent together, that everyone on this call can sort of think about. Let's always make sure we keep looking for new ways to learn. Always make sure you're maintaining your connections. Check in with your clients, see how they're doing. Be kind to them. You never know what's happening behind the scenes. Don't just call them when you need more business. Call them just to say hi, or if you've seen a great article that relates to something you talked about over a lunch a year ago. So maintain those connections, even if it has to be virtual. Certainly, we want to expect the unexpected in terms of everything that we've all gone through for the past year. And also, as today's a perfect example, every interaction counts. So Vanessa, would love to hear if there are any other takeaways, or which one of these is most relevant to you.
It's interesting. I would say probably 2 and 3. From a client perspective, I actually feel like we've developed closer relationships with our clients because, previously we'd all be in one, conference room, and our clients would be in another location, and you didn't have that FaceTime. But now with Zoom, I'm seeing my clients on a weekly basis. And I just think it's honestly, I feel like it's made me have stronger relationships, with some of our clients. And I think it's kind of helped us overcome the fact that we can't necessarily be in person. And I completely agree with your point about checking in. That's one thing that just last week, I caught up with a client. We just did a 15-minute Zoom. It wasn't long. We didn't have an agenda, but just through casual conversation, it totally opened up an opportunity area for us that wouldn't have happened otherwise, right? So sometimes just those "how are you doing" conversations can lead to business opportunities. And then, in terms of 3, expect the unexpected, I would almost say it's about being able to quickly pivot to the unexpected. Like, I would have to say, I don't think any of us on this Zoom right now could have anticipated what the last 12 months were going to be like. But again, it's about being able to quickly pivot to the new, like, what is the new normal or the current normal. Working from home was not something that I really enjoyed doing. And now, honestly, I quite love it. Because I can get laundry done while I'm doing, while I'm working during the day. Believe me, I don't think it's great being from home all the time. But anyway, I think, those two creatives were a perfect example. Like, you just have to be able to say, okay, well, this is what's happening now. We got to roll with it. We got to change and we got to mix it up. And so I think it's just about maybe not expecting the unexpected, but be able to react quickly to the unexpected, because there will always be something that you cannot anticipate is going to happen to your business.
That's true in business and in life and in everything that we do. So love that you leaned in on that one. I couldn't agree more. So I would love to end this portion of the presentation by sharing a video on one of the most important initiatives that our company, Effectv, Comcast, has ever undertaken. As part of Comcast's recent commitment of $100 million to help combat racial injustice, Effectv and Comcast Business have collaborated on a multi-year initiative to provide media and technology resources for thousands of small businesses. The intent is to help BIPOC-owned businesses at a time that they need our support the most. The first group of participants was announced last November, when over 700 businesses received a range of advertising, marketing, and tech makeovers to help empower them to succeed during this turbulent time. Over 1,200 more recipients are going to be announced next week. And then third round of opportunity is currently open for applications. So let's take a look at the next video.
Businesses are largely in COVID. Small businesses have been almost twice as likely to shutter.
Disproportionately so.
More than half of Black business owners
struggling to obtain federal paycheck protection.
Joy back into the community.
On African Americans. Somehow we always find a way to rise.
To the blueprint builders, to the backbones of every block, to the late night legends and the pioneers of legacy, for the curators of the culture, for the family franchise, and for generations to follow. You might fall, but never fail. Keep rising, keep rising, keep rising. Apply today for a variety of business, marketing, and tech makeovers on us to help your rise.
So I encourage everybody on this call to send this link to anybody who is a small business owner, who is a member of an underrepresented minority, and we encourage them to apply. In addition to media and tech makeovers, as well as advertising campaigns and marketing services, we're now also offering grants, just purely to help them out with dollars, because sometimes that's really what they need. So I'm really proud to be a part of an organization that supports underserved communities. And I'm so happy to have had a chance to have this conversation with you, Vanessa. This was such a pleasure. You didn't think we were going to have enough to talk about, and boy, we are at time already.
Well, thank you again for having me. I thought this was, a really great conversation.
I couldn't agree more. Amanda, thank you.
Thank you, guys. I thoroughly, as a marketing director for the Chamber, thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. And if you guys don't mind, I do have some questions for you. I kind of filtered through and grouped them here. There was one question, Vanessa, targeted kind of about examples of what your creative became during the pandemic. And I think your two examples showed how relevant and how quickly you pivoted. So I kind of want to group, do you have any other examples of trends that you thought were relevant or have been in the last couple months? And then another question that came through privately was about, TV saw huge numbers at the beginning of the pandemic. Has this leveled out, or is it still growing? And so that kind of, talk about the trends of the pandemic and where you see them going.
Sure. Vanessa, you want to go first about creative, then I'll cover the trends?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, showing those two spots was a really good example. I think, just kind of behind the scenes too, we did produce spots during the pandemic, and with not being able to fly, or not being able to all be in a production studio together was challenging. We actually did a lot of recording. We had to shoot a commercial for a client on the West Coast, and so we found a director on the West Coast. They did a socially distanced shoot. Like, the spot had to be reworked so it had less people in it. And then we had our creative teams on Zoom here. So it was all done via Zoom. So we had the director doing it in California, and we had our creatives here giving their feedback and their direction, et cetera, instead of being, on set, because there was no on-set availability, in April and May. So not only did we have to change what the spots were saying, but we had to completely change our process for how we were actually developing the spots in the first place.
Very impressive transition. That's a big move to make.
Well, you got to roll with the punches again. You got to be able to pivot with the unexpected. So kudos to the creative
So then,
team.
Lisa, was it worth the pivot? Were trends continuing? Are people still booming on TV as we're all stuck at home watching TV all day?
Yeah, it's interesting. Certainly when everyone was really quarantined pretty much across the whole country, TV viewing skyrocketed. But what we saw, when sports was canceled due to, the pandemic, what we found is that people were still watching TV. They were just watching different TV. And because our data scientists have already mined 20 million set-top boxes, they were able to know what sports viewers watch in addition to sports. So we were able to come back with our clients and present them with data-driven campaigns to find those sports enthusiasts, and rerun their campaign that they were planning on running during the Final Four and during MLB and everything else, still reaching that same audience, but in different content. And then when sports were back up in September, there was this convergence of 9 major sporting events that took place at the same time, and viewership skyrocketed. So we're still consistently seeing very high levels of viewership, and certainly it varies as new regulations for COVID and restrictions are opening up a little bit. But what we're finding that engagement levels are still really high. People are still watching TV across all screens and devices. And it's not going anywhere. The engagement is still going to continue as long as there's great content to watch. And once COVID lets up and the production studios start back up again, there's going to be so much content that people aren't going to be able to have enough hours in the day to watch everything they want.
I feel that way now.
I pretty much do too.
Awesome. Well, if you guys have 2 more quick questions, I'm going to kind of group these 2 from our viewers today. So Sue was wondering if this current environment kind of hindered business growth, or was this an opportunity for you to gain more business and more people taking advantage of the ability to advertise in these different platforms? And then to tie in a little bit with Angie's question early in the presentation, a lot of the examples were B2C, other approaches for B2B. I think those 2 could kind of group together based on how you approached your B2B approach during the pandemic.
Yeah, so we actually, we work with a B2B client, and, they put a lot of things on hold because of supply chain concerns. But, it's interesting. I've been kind of reading about what the trends are going to be, for the rest of this year and into next year for B2B, and things are going to start to come back. But I think what is going to continue to change and evolve is that the way you communicate with your customers from a B2B perspective is going to be a lot more digital. In terms of sales forces, looking to do more Zoom because in-person meetings may not be happening for a while. Travel may, not be as common as it used to be. So it's about how can you maintain those connections with customers. And I think that's where data and digital can really come into play, because you can still have that conversation with a customer without necessarily needing it to be face-to-face.
And I think from Effective's viewpoint, we're entirely B2B. our whole job is working with clients so that they can then promote their clients and customers, or we're working with small businesses so that they can reach their customers. And when small businesses got hit really badly by COVID, of course, we took a big hit as well. But what we found is that as soon as businesses started opening up, they came back to us in droves. We are seeing tremendous growth. We're seeing fantastic revenue for the first quarter, and we only see it continuing. And again, because again, as Vanessa put so beautifully, like, we're able to provide value, and people are actually seeing the results of their media dollars. So they know it's not just a wasted spend, and we're going to continue that trend.
Fantastic. Go ahead, Vanessa.
And as I mentioned, I was just going to say, and as I mentioned at the beginning, we actually, we're pretty successful from a new business perspective. I think, from a pitching perspective, it was definitely slower this year, but it was still happening. I think, we had to get used to doing pitching on Zoom, which I think was probably one of the biggest challenges, particularly when you were pitching to clients who didn't have their cameras on, because then you miss that opportunity to be able to read the room and get a feel for how things are being, perceived. So if there's any clients out there, I just ask as a favor, please, don't turn your camera off during a new business pitch, because it makes it really awkward from our perspective. Like, you need to have that visual cue. So
I agree.
We could do more.
You guys touched on so many great points about the making connections and maintaining connections. I give everyone one more chance to submit a question if they'd like, but I just want to thank you guys and thank Effectv. You guys obviously are leaders and expert in your fields, but you also touched on kindness and introduced us to the RISE program, and really appreciate the conversation today. It looks like we're good on conversations, but everyone, this was the Effectv team, and Vanessa's with Laughlin Constable. I encourage you guys to connect, maintain those connections, reach out, keep your camera on. And there's just a reception here today at the end. This is the last hour of the exchange. So thank you both for making it a wonderful ending.
Thank you so much.
Well,
all right.
Thank you to Lisa and Effectv, and thank you to the chamber.
It was such a pleasure. Amanda, thank you so much. Thank you to the chamber, and have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you.